Welcome to Marvelous Disney, the podcast that discusses the most recent doings at one of the more dynamic divisions of the Walt Disney Company, which is, of course, Marvel Entertainment. This is entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the amazing Aaron Adams, and I are recording this episode on Wednesday, July 6, 2022. Lots of Marvel-related stuff on the horizon, folks. I mean, I don't need to tell you that just a day or two up the line, Friday, July 8th, we get Thor: Love and Thunder arriving at theaters. But then immediately after that, on Wednesday, July 13th, we get the sixth and final episode of what me personally am hoping is season 1 of Ms. Marvel that debuts on Disney+. And then the day after that, Thursday, July 14th, the Disney Wish heads out on its maiden voyage and a 5-day cruise to Nassau, Bahamas, and Disney's Castaway Cay. The first members of the public will then get to experience the Worlds of Marvel Cinematic Dining Show, which Aaron and I will talk about at length on the second half of today's show. And then finally, 6 days after that, Wednesday, July 20th, we get the Avengers Campus at Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris officially opening. But again, lots of Marvel-related news happening in the month of June. And speaking of news portion of this week's Marvelous Disney is brought to you by Storybook Destination, trusted travel partner of the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. For a worry-free travel experience, please book online at storybookdestinations.com. And speaking of books, obviously, Aaron and I are going to talk about episodes 4 and 5 of Ms. Marvel, second half of today's show, which I thought previously was doing a great job of bumping out the world and the cast, but these last 2 episodes are just crazy. But the bar for these limited series from Marvel Studios was already so high. I mean, think about it. We've already had WandaVision, Loki, Hawkeye, Moon Knight. And of course, the first of these to premiere on that streaming service was WandaVision. That showed up in January of 2021. We got 9 episodes, and that wrapped March 5th of that same year. But then 2 weeks later, we got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which debuted March 19th, 2021, just 6 episodes, and then wrapped in April of last year. And I bring that up because just this week, on Tuesday, June 28th, Marvel's Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the Art of the Series book, finally hit store shelves. And that's 14, 15 months after the show debuted or finished its run on Disney+. And it's a beautiful 224-page hardcover. It does an amazing job of reminding you what the poor slobs who worked on Falcon and the Winter Soldier went through. I mean, I think we reported on this in real time back in the day, Aaron, where they were literally all getting ready to go get on the plane to go to Puerto Rico. And only to then there was the earthquake. And, so it's okay, we're going to go to Prague instead. And then while they're in Prague, word comes down that it's a pandemic, go home. And they stop shooting for 5 months. And none of that shows up on screen. It's still a wonderful show. Anthony Mackie does an amazing job as Sam Wilson. Likewise, Sebastian Stan is Bucky Barnes. And what's great about this book is they walk you through. I'm almost embarrassed sometimes at the artistic choices that are so obvious when they point it out to you. Like, for example, in The Winter Soldier, you know that Bucky is the villain, because his hair is long. Going into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, one of the choices is, well, Bucky's redeeming himself, so he has to go get a haircut.
Sure, well, that's the sign of a respectable human being.
Well, there we go.
Which is why I've got very long hair. So in one of the original, the Spider-Man from 2002, they were going to make a clear mask for a brief second, and that's kind of, one of those things that they decided not to do. Mm-hmm. In this book, did you get to glean any where they almost went one direction that could have been a tragic, horrible mistake, like a clear mask for Spider-Man that was red and you could still see his face underneath? Did they do anything really almost heinous to the Winter Soldier or to Falcon?
What's great about this book is that it's the filmmakers walking through, and in fact, the very thing that you, Aaron, cited almost from the very first episode about that amazing stunt sequence where you first really get to see Anthony Mackie in action in this limited series, where he's trying to rescue the guy who's been, they're flying him over the border, and they do that flying suit sequence.
So let's stop here for just a second because I want to ask about a logistic here. You remember back in the day when Tom Cruise jumped from one rock to another really high up and everyone's like, oh, we can't insure this guy. He's a wacko, right? That's crazy. He's a rock jumper. And now we've got guys at Marvel. Hey, I got a guy in a wingsuit. What's that? Oh, you stick out your arms and you kind of glide along. Okay, what do you want to do with it? I want to fly him into a helicopter, like one that's on the ground. No, one that's actually flying with the blades going and everything. And you're like, how much feet of clearance do you have before you have an accident? Maybe 2 feet, 3 feet. It's like somehow that conversation happened, and it still got greenlit to go, yeah, let's go ahead with that, where we could have people puree rain down upon whatever's below if we screw this up.
They talk with pride in this book about how when you've got somebody in the Anthony Mackie Falcon suit who's legitimately falling, said you get shots that you just can't get from green screen. And it made for a much better sequence that way.
Sure. Probably part of the reason why Top Gun Maverick's so hot right now is because they actually flew real airplanes and did real things, and people are like, holy, did you see that?
Yeah.
And I think that's part of that spectacle of, I do remember when that person entered the helicopter through the side, and I was just like, that is some of the best effects work, because I can't see anything that, it looked too real almost to be like, did they film that on a GoPro? That's what it felt like. And to find out that crap, they kind of practically did, and it's just like, geez, I know that there are stunt performers out there that glide within inches of disaster, and that's their thing. And they found this team that was willing to do that. And they were like, hey, can we film you doing it one time? We'll pay a couple grand and or whatever it took. And then they got the shot. So, some amazing stuff.
And if you talk with folks at Marvel Studios, they are very proud of the legion of stunt performers they have. And face it, they are steadily employed.
Well, sure. All the heroes and all the villains and all the henchmen that you got to take down to get to the bad guy. Sure.
Yeah, so these are folks who get lots of practice. But anyway, to circle back to the book, and yes, it is somewhat frustrating that it took 14 or 15 months for this to finally arrive. And they're having the exact same issues with the WandaVision Art book. That didn't show up till March of this year. And the Loki book, which I'm really looking forward to, that doesn't get here till October of this year. And the same thing's going on with the Shang-Chi art book. That doesn't show up till December 27th of this year, which at least now I know what I'll be spending those Amazon cards I always get for Christmas on.
Now, are these all problems due to COVID? All these delays? Was this poor planning? Was this stuff stuck on a ship somewhere outside of California? What was...
All of the above, actually.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Everything, when I talk with folks on the publishing side of Marvel, some of it is supply chain issues. Some of it is that the books are published in places like Turkey, which, again, given the pandemic and what's going on with shipping. And then there's the frustration that Kevin Feige likes keeping secrets. And so the whole notion of if we put the making a book out in the same window of time as the film or the TV series, and again, given these things have to arrive 6 weeks out ahead anyway. So Kevin it's like, those don't need to be there immediately.
Exactly, because I was kind of thinking it doesn't seem all that odd with them being late, because it seems like they've got the same problem with toys in general right now, is everything in the movie has got to be such a secret that we can't release any of the basic toys until like a couple weeks after, before everyone's been able to see it.
I don't know if you saw the story just this past week about the Wakanda Forever toys are starting to bubble up in ways, with the understanding that, they want for the retail channels to be able to order these things. And the problem is that if you can get a hold of the same things that the big boxes like the Targets and the Walmarts can, you can read the outside of the boxes. And there are folks who are looking at these things going, hey, hello, Namor.
Yeah, right. Well, I think we already knew that Namor was the thing because you reported, a couple months ago now about the pool set, right?
Likewise, there's been, I want to say, Tinoch Horda. Is that how we pronounce his name? That's supposedly the actor who's been tagged for this. But speaking of Wakanda Forever, and I'm asking you about this story as a radio professional, because did you see the Howard Stern story?
I did, and I immediately interpreted the story the way a rational human being should interpret it. Please go ahead.
Well, okay. Now, I'm sharing the version of this story that was published by the New York Post. This happened Thursday of last week, June 30th. And so it's Howard in the middle of doing his daily Sirius XM satellite radio show. And they go to commercial. So Robin Quivers, his longtime co-host, assumes that the mics are off and proceeds to just, casually chatting with Howard, to the effect of, okay, so what are your plans for the summer? And Howard, into what supposedly a hot mic says, well, I'm going to do Dr. Doom. But believe me, I'm effing miserable about it. He then turns to Gary Delabate, his longtime producer, and mentions that he reached out to Robert Downey Jr., to the effect of, how do you act in an MCU film? And Robert gave him some advice, and then he turns to Gary and says, by the way, do you have Jon Favreau's contact info? Because I'd like to talk to him too. And it's at this moment, evidently, that somebody notices the mic is open and they shut it down. But that made it out on air. And does that sound legit to you?
Well, I'll tell you, this happened, the same story happened two different ways in the same building, just right down the hall. I'm going to leave the names out of it to keep people innocent because F-bombs were dropped on public airwaves and, if people wanted to complain to the FCC, they could have at that moment. But anyway, when we switched over to a digital system and it was all touch screen, you didn't actually pot down your microphone and turn it off. You just tapped a screen and it said the mic was off. And our rock station hosts were speaking to callers. And as they were being jovial, they were throwing F-bombs left and right. And it was all being broadcast over the air and they had no idea. And this went on for about 15 to 20 minutes before someone came bursting into the studio and, very quietly was like, just stop talking and get out of the room. Now, on the flip side of that, just down the hall, we had a morning host who would love to do a good prank.
Okay.
And so he would say, uh-oh, mic's broken. I can't turn it off. All right, well, here's the Beatles, and we're going to try and figure things out. And then he would start playing the song, and he'd go, all right, Julie, what's the answer for our super hard trivia? Bacon fat. All right, that sounds good. All right, here, we're coming out of the song. All right, and our super hard trivia today is what is, and then he would ask the question, and everybody knew bacon fat because he just said it. And it was just a lark that he could fool around for a day and play different pranks on people with this device of oops, our mic is stuck open. And so either way it can happen. I think that Howard Stern doesn't need to pull a stunt right now to get attention.
Okay.
He's too far in his career, and he just doesn't give a shit about that. So I think the situation is legitimate, and I think Howard will appear in a movie in a very small, limited role, and he's very insecure about his little 3 minutes in a giant billion-dollar Marvel movie.
Thank you for saying that, because that I've been working my trap line, and evidently that's what this is. Now, mind you, I want to stress here that Kevin Feige does sometimes make some interesting casting choices. Remember that Bill Murray is supposedly playing a bad guy in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which out in theaters February of 2023. But very doubtful that Howard Stern is playing Doctor Doom, because
I mean, Robert Redford played a bad guy in one of our movies, right? I mean, anyway, and it's just like, I swear to God, if Howard Stern plays physically Doctor Doom,
Yep.
I will eat my own foot. I mean, like, I cannot imagine anyone in the casting office going, who should we get for Doctor Doom? Who should we get for Doctor Doom? Unless, and this is just really... this would be insane thought process, but if someone did it, kudos for thinking outside the box. If you're going to put the dude in a mask, what if he's just the voice? Right? Who gives a crap then? And he's gonna be Doctor Doom. He's just the voice, and they can put him through some metallic sounding thing to make him sound, a little bit weird. But they've got a super famous voice, and I'm sure he can rant and rave with the best of them. Right? It's Howard freaking Stern. So who knows? Who knows?
Well, now
what
you
they've got
see,
planned?
that's interesting, because think about
He's
it.
the James Earl Jones of the Doctor Doom.
Well,
character.
I would actually, go in the other direction. You think about what James Spader did.
For Ultron, sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that was an absolutely killer villain for that film. He did an amazing job.
All right, lots to think about there.
Okay, the other thing that's being floated is that supposedly what Howard is talking about here is that in much the same tradition of what happened at the original Avengers, where we got our little taste of Thanos in that mid-credit scene, which then set up the whole arc that would then play out over Infinity Wars and Endgame. Supposedly, what they may do is literally have Howard play himself, and somebody he's interviewing is revealed to be Doctor Doom. And, we just get that little taste at the end of the show. And given what they just did with J. Jonah Jameson, with J.K. Simmons coming back as that character, it's like, okay, maybe they're going to go this way. It's just enough information to be confused, which brings us to our next news item. Literally within 24 hours of each other, story broke. Once again, here is Ryan Reynolds supposedly trying to get Hugh Jackman to reprise his role as Wolverine in Deadpool 3. And Hugh, who's on Broadway now in The Music Man, evidently played along. So posted a picture on Twitter of himself looking at his phone with the news breaking about, I'm in Deadpool 3. Well, that's interesting. But within the same 24-hour period, we had Taron Egerton, who did the wonderful job in Rocketman, in an interview with the New York Times, no less. He talked about how he had met with Kevin Feige to discuss taking over the role of Wolverine in a future MCU movie.
And Kevin Feige gave him a hearty pat on the back and said, thanks for stopping by, kid. Door's over this way. Let me show it to you. He's a fine actor. I don't see him as Wolverine. But again, nobody saw Hugh Jackman as Wolverine when he was announced, and now he's irreplaceable, right? So anybody can surprise you. Heath Ledger is the Joker. Everybody thought it was crazy, and then all of a sudden, oh my God, it's the most amazing thing ever. But an actor can surprise you when they're committed to giving it their all. So who knows?
We live in strange times. Which, by the way, Jeff Snyder of The Ankler, literally this afternoon, was sharing info about what's going on with Spunk, the Sony Pictures universe of Marvel characters. And they're kind of still dealing with the aftermath of, well, the internet says that they'd go to Morbius if we put it out in theaters again. So that worked out so well. And you got to picture the executives at Sony who are watching the Gentle Minions, all those teenage boys who are dressing up in suits to go see Minions Rise of Gru. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why did their online thing work out and ours didn't? How did that happen? But Craven is largely in the can at this point. Madam Web.
Wait, are they going to change? Is Craven going to be the snuggly guy? Because he's no longer the hunter, right? He's a friend to animals. Is it Craven the snuggler?
I don't know what to tell you.
I mean, right now, when they talk about it online, is it just Craven, quote
Just
unquote?
Craven. Just
all right,
Craven.
so no subtitles, no.
Nope, not yet.
Alrighty,
Not yet.
alrighty.
Not-
Same for Madam Web as well, correct? Just Madam Web, quote,
Just Madam
quote.
Web.
No, all right.
And by the way, Madam Web actually starts shooting next week up in my neck of the woods in Boston. It gets underway July 11th, and they're going to be shooting in and around Massachusetts through September. And I was just pointing out to Nancy that's like, oh, they're looking for extras. So if anybody wants to go down to the set and tell us what they saw, that would be killer. But at the same time, Sony, obviously on the heels of the giant pile of money that No Way Home made, and remember, they're looking forward to the even more money they'll be making later this summer when the extra extended all fun stuff edition of No Way Home goes up back out into theaters.
Best case scenario of re-releasing a movie with extra scenes, like George Lucas did it, right? When he gave us the special edition of Star Wars.
He did.
What could Sony hope for? Best case scenario: 100 million, 200, 500 million. What's the top bar there?
Realistically, I have heard that they will be able to make over and around the Memorial Day weekend $30 to $50 million stateside, and then overseas a similar number. So I mean, it's only potentially going to be $100 million.
Yeah, but I mean that makes the effort worth it in that instance.
There we go. And
Right.
at a time when theaters around the country are looking for that last little bit of summer ticket sales, it's like, cool, come back to the theater, see this movie. But at the same time, the theater owners are like, oh, great, an even longer version of No Way Home.
No, I'll tell you, Jim, back in the old days, Spider-Man 2, when the 2.1 came out, was it, on DVD? If I could have seen that extended Doc Ock battle scene in theaters, I'm certain I would have plunked my money down back then. And the only reason I don't think I'm going to be able to this time around is just due to time required to get to a theater for me right now is kind of tough.
I get that. I do.
I don't know. I think I would be in the crowd if I could.
Okay. Well, no. Speaking of which, getting back to Sony and again, the spunk, they very much want to get a new Spider-Man trilogy in the works.
A couple episodes ago, remember when we said Venom was going to be done at 3?
Yep.
And I said, no, they're not. They're gonna stop at 3, and then they're gonna give you 3 more for a total of 6. You just said that about Spider-Man. They want a new trilogy.
They do.
Right? They can't think past 3s. And I'm mildly disappointed that it's all about. I mean, they got to play the numbers. They got to figure out a budget. They got to build a thing. So it needs a blueprint. And trilogies are easy, but it's so formulaic. And if Marvel's not heavily involved in the Spider-Man thing, it could all go sour on them, like the way some of their side characters are underperforming.
Well, interesting you say that, because Mr. Holland has not signed with Sony yet. And supposedly one of the reasons that Mr. Holland has not signed with Sony is he has the very same concerns that you do, that the good Spider-Man movies have been made with the involvement of, heavy involvement of Sony. And right now...
Marvel.
Marvel, my mistake. And all right, we're going to do another trilogy. So you're getting Feige in here, right? We're going to talk about stories, and we're going to talk about bringing in people from the MCU, not just Madam Web and Craven, right? And evidently he's not getting the answers he wants to hear. And Tom's evidently a little ticked off about how Sony has been limiting his ability to do Disney-related stuff. And remember, we just last year, with the opening of the Avengers Campus, finally got the Web Slingers attraction open in Anaheim. And by the way, that'll be opening later this month. They'll be opening a version at Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris. But Tom was originally supposed to also be featured in the Worlds of Marvel cinematic dining experience. Peter Parker was supposed to show up as part of the film moments of that show. And evidently, Sony made it so difficult that Disney finally, the hell with it. And they had written all these gags about Peter Parker being so happy that I've never been on a cruise ship before. And, I'm feeling a little seasick, and that sort of thing. Right. And all they decided to do, it's like, okay, well, Sony won't let us have it. Tom Holland, fine. we've got Iman Vellani, playing Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel. And it's like, just take all of the Peter Parker lines and give them to Iman. And by the way, when we get back from this break, Aaron and I will talk about the last couple of episodes of Ms. Marvel and also the Worlds of Marvel cinematic dining experience aboard the Disney Wish.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for the stay.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Does it ever feel like you're a marketing professional just speaking into the void? But with LinkedIn ads, you can know you're reaching the right decision makers, a network of 130 million of them, in fact. You can even target buyers by job title, industry, company, seniority, skills, and did I say job title? See how you can avoid the void and reach the right buyers with LinkedIn ads. Spend $250 on your first campaign and get a free $250 credit for the next one. Get started at linkedin.com/campaign. Terms and conditions apply.
Tail end of episode 4 of Ms. Marvel. Did you have a Gone with the Wind moment? The pulling out from the train and showing the giant, the huge
throng of people.
Yes. It was one of these things where just that episode alone, I don't know how much of it was actually shot on location. But they did such an amazing job of making the world of Karachi seem so vivid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, balancing it out with these beautiful family-driven moments. But to then end on that image where it's like, I was trying to think that sort of scale stuff you don't typically do for television. And I get this is subscription streaming service, and I get this is Marvel Studios.
Right.
But even so, that sort of shot, which I thought when we looked at some of the stuff that was in episode 5 that dropped today on Disney Plus, and the crowds making their way to the train station, or for that matter, the scenes of Kamala trying to, again, I don't want to spoil too much here, seeking out relatives. I was just kind of floored by the ambition and the scale of this.
Well, I think that in the exact same way that the creative or the director of Moon Knight was very, very adamant that he wanted to see the real Egypt. And he kind of mentioned that in all the movies, Egypt is shot, or the pyramids are shot from the desert side, but you never see it from the city side because the city goes right up to the pyramids. And that's real Egypt. I think when, someone's trying to, and I think also Marvel's trying to do a very decent job of letting a culture be represented to its fullest, to let us experience these things that, I've never seen before. I've never got to travel to these exotic locations, and they're gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes me long to go to these places. You were talking with Len recently on Disney Dish about how he went to Norway and got stopped at customs. Why are you here? I saw this place in Epcot and thought it was so cool. I wanted to see it in real life. And the guy was like, what? It's a wonderful episode of Disney Dish. Please go listen to it after you get done with this episode. But same thing. When I see this episode of Ms. Marvel, I feel like I want to go there and experience it for myself because it's just stinking gorgeous.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, and also, like we were just talking a few moments ago, they were willing to risk making people puree with a helicopter with one wrong move with Falcon and Winter Soldier. Flying people to India doesn't seem that far away from, that's just like a small thing now with the caliber of what they're trying to pull off. Flying someone to a location just doesn't seem like it's a thing anymore. And they're in Australia, doing these shoots down there. They're in England. They're in Atlanta. They're where they need to be.
I get that. I do. But at the same time, what they've done with Ms. Marvel, I think about how many people have been exposed to the history of India and Pakistan, or, who knew nothing of the Great Partition, who, are getting an education with the show. Coupled with, I love these slices of life of getting to see what it's like to be a teenage Pakistani Muslim girl, and how respectful they are of the world, at the same time how genuinely entertaining and funny Ms. Villani is. I mean, it's an absolutely killer performance. She is such a real teenage girl.
I had the exact same. I've got a friend with a daughter like same age, and it made me think. This reminds me of M. Because she's just got that vibe of she doesn't know who she is yet. She's trying to figure herself out. The world's got a billion options in front of you, kid. What do you want to do? I've got no idea. Just trying to sort out today. Can I do today? And I feel that she's got a very authentic quality to her, like you said.
No, absolutely. I mean, I know we said this at the end of, when we were, at episode 5 of Moon Knight, and they were teeing up 6, and it's like, there's a part of me, it's like, I don't want this to be over.
Sure.
I get it. We are going to see Ms. Villani in the Marvels next summer. And, that will be cool, but it's just sort of like, this is a great character, and this is a very vivid world, and I really enjoy her family. In fact, it was so much fun after the first 4 episodes of watching Kamala's mom bust her chops, to suddenly watch, the mom be back with her mother.
Sure.
And to watch in fact, that there's a wonderful line from the tail end of the episode, and Kamala finally comes home and talking to her mom, you look upset for some reason, and she's, well, mothers, just sort of like, what I do to you, my mother has been doing to me. And it's like, have a toffee. It's just wonderfully assured storytelling, a vivid world, great cast, killer visuals. We said the exact same thing about Moon Knight, and the whole notion of the fact that Marvel Studios can deliver this level of quality with these limited series is just kind of stunning.
Have you picked up yet on the fact that she is building her costume piece by piece at the moment, episode by episode?
Oh, dang. No,
I'm
but thank you for
sorry.
pointing that. No, no, I love that, because now the scarf that the
Well, it starts with the mask, and then
Right.
she got the red top. I don't know what the official name for the top would be, but yeah, and then the scarf that goes along with it, and then she'll get a couple more pieces, I'm sure, to finish it off. Because in the promo footage they have her in her final costume, which looks really great, and I can't wait to see its final form show up on screen. But I've been enjoying the pieces as they come together, and you start to recognize, there's a glimpse. Okay, cool.
They just had last week the press preview for the Disney Wish, and a bunch of media types got on the boat and went through all 3. They do this thing on the Disney cruise ship called rotational dining. And the gimmick is that from night to night, you move, from one restaurant to the next restaurant to the next restaurant. But the interesting thing is the staff stays with you. So the gentleman who's serving your dinner knows, okay, this is the guy who wants the Diet Coke, no ice. And you get top service that way. But the Wish has 3 rotational dining opportunities. There's the 1923, which is their upscale quiet restaurant. Another night you get to go to Arendelle, a frozen dining adventure, and that's just basically dinner theater that they perform. It's cast members dressed as Anna, Elsa, Sven, and the bunch and they perform numbers from Frozen and Frozen 2. And then there is Worlds of Marvel, which Disney is promoting as its first cinematic dining adventure. And what that means, Aaron, is that you are in this relatively narrow restaurant space. In fact, this actually keys off of something that was done on the other 4 Disney boats, the artist palette. The idea is that at each table, there's a giant screen that sort of looms up, and they, would show animated footage. In fact, the end of the evening, they would do this thing where you had drawn a character on your placemat and they had spirited it away, and then as you sat at your table, you watched the character that you had drawn and be animated in front of you. It would sing, dance, that sort of thing. It was a cool effect. So they wanted to revisit this idea, dining next to giant screens on the Disney Wish, and they wanted to really lean into their first Marvel-based experience. So what they've done is that they've broken it up into 3 acts. You go to this Worlds of Marvel restaurant, which, by the way, the menu is supposedly influenced by places you've seen in the Marvel movies.
So you got a shawarma shop, right?
Well, actually, I think you get shawarma on board, but I want to say they have menu items that are influenced by Wakanda.
Ant-Man's tacos that he hands off to Hulk there.
I wish. You see, you're zeroing in the food that I want,
Right, yeah.
But on the other hand, they have chicken schnitzel that supposedly has come from Sokovia. And meanwhile, while you're being served your Marvel-inspired food, you have Scott Lang and Hope Van Dyne, who are supposedly live casting to the room from the Marvel Superhero Academy, which is a couple of decks below this restaurant. And they got Paul Rudd to come back and do Scott Lang. Evangeline Lilly, likewise, is there to do Hope Van Dyne. And then later in the show, you get to see Scott Mackey as Captain America, Sam Wilson. We've already talked about him. Milan Vellani as Ms. Marvel, Kamala Khan. And then batting cleanup is Brie Larson as Captain America, Carol Danvers. And we were talking about James Spader just a moment ago, and that what makes that interesting is the big bad for this show is Ultron, an army of his clones, and who's there to steal quantum tech. Anyway, the show, as you might expect, is a Disney dinner theater thing on a cruise. Starts off silly. Scott is there doing a Miracles from Molecules presentation, which, by the way, is the name of the song that the Sherman Brothers wrote for the Adventures Through Inner Space attraction years and years and years ago for the Disney parks. But anyway, Scott wants to demonstrate his PIM tech by shrinking his suitcase so it will finally fit under his bed in the cabin. But he also has brought with him, somebody made a swan towel sculpture on his bed. And he brought that with him. And evidently something goes wrong because while the suitcase is shrunk down, the swan towels thing becomes like 12 feet tall. And so it's like, okay, we need to work on the tech. But meanwhile, enjoy your salad. And then on the second attempt to get the tech working properly, you have these images that suggest that Scott has accidentally shrunk down the entire ship. In fact, there's a shot of a rather curious seagull about to eat the Disney Wish, and at the last minute, Scott is able to get the ship back to normal. And then, okay, we move to our main course, and now we have our actual battle. And what happens first is that we have Captain America, Sam Wilson, and Kamala Khan show up because they've seen this energy surge from the PIM tech and want to be sure that things are on the up and up. And even though on the show we still have Kamala Khan and the Ms. Marvel limited series assembling her costume, she's in her full outfit for this show for the Disney Wish. And to be honest, now that I know the story about how the character, the role that she's playing in this show for the Disney Cruise Line was originally written for Tom Holland, that maybe explains why Kamala, it's not the same level of performance that you get on the limited series. It literally is kind of a theme parky show performance, but again, it's Iman Vellani. It's just sort of like, wow, you're better on the show than you are on the boat. Anyway, long story short, Ultron also sees the signal, shows up at the boat. They proceed to have a battle on the upper deck of the boat, which involves the Aquamouse water coaster and all this. And it's the space that people on the cruise have been walking through the entire time. So it's like, wow, I know that space, and that's where they're having their battle. Anyway, it all, as you might expect, ends happily. That Scott Lang is actually able to trick Ultron and shrinks him down into the quantum realm. And of course, nothing bad will ever happen because of that. And then Brie Larson basically shows up and takes out all of the rest of the clones. And if I have a complaint about the show, it's the fact that on the limited, the Ms. Marvel limited series, they make no bones about Kamala is a huge fangirl of Ms. Marvel. And there is literally no interaction between these two. Brie's character shows up, takes out the Ultron clones, has a brief exchange with Anthony Mackie's Captain America, and then blips out. And only then does Milan Vellani's Kamala Khan come back into it. And it's just sort of like, wow, you had this moment. You could have done something with it. But
well, there's also the fact that so we'll have the Marvels movie come out. How long do you think this particular filmed type of event will stay on the cruise from now until the end of eternity? Will they change it out after 20 years, 5 or 10? Because it might be the point where they go, oh, no, they're like sisters by now. They don't even care. It's just like, oh, hey, what's up? See ya.
That's an interesting point. I mean, I do know that, well, the animated palette show that inspired this has been playing for a decade or more at this point. So once they install these things, they play forever. Anyway, from a cross-promotional point of view, they do mention as part of the show both the Avengers Campus in Anaheim, likewise the soon-to-open Avengers Campus in Paris, which they sort of insinuate is up and running now. And speaking of cross-promotion, I don't know if you noticed today when you went to go watch Ms. Marvel what they did with the title cards out ahead of the airing of Episode 5. What was interesting there is that understanding that Thor Love and Thunder is opening at theaters in days.
Right.
What they did, coming straight out of Ms. Marvel, it's, oh, by the way, have you noticed that we have the Thor collection? And then they had an additional title card that said, to prepare for Thor Love and Thunder, be sure and watch Thor Ragnarok, which...
At what point does this sound like homework?
I get that. I mean,
it's starting to a little bit, but they kind of have to always have that promotional mindset. Hey, this new thing's coming out. Look at the old thing we got over here. Go spend money over to the left at Disney Plus. All right, now come to the theater over to the right and buy a ticket to Thor over here. And, have you purchased a Thor toy lately?
Yeah, I mean, again, nobody does this better than Disney, but sometimes it gets a little naked.
Sure.
By the way, again, neither Aaron nor I at this point have seen Thor Love and Thunder. Drew, my co-host on Fine Tuning, has, and he enjoyed it quite a bit. But the reviews so far for Love and Thunder have been good, not great. In fact, surprisingly, a number of them kind of go after Taika Waititi, to the effect of, okay, this is the same shtick as Thor Love and Thunder, but it's not quite as new and as fun this time around. Which I have to tell you, the guy from Variety pinned the needle in the exact opposite direction. Just talked about how much fun it was to have a movie like this back in theaters. And, to definitely check it out. But you were talking about out ahead of getting to see Thor Love and Thunder, that you've already heard some interesting things about things that got cut out of this movie, right?
Yeah, apparently there was a lawsuit for Lena Headey. She was apparently had been cast, and nobody knows what the role is, just that she had been cast, and now that she had been cut. And I don't even think that the lawsuit had anything to do with Taika or Marvel. I think it had to do with her casting agency and some contractual verbiage.
Okay.
So it's not like a huge deal that Marvel has to worry about. It's just a headline that popped up like, oh, she was connected to this and there's a lawsuit and, whatever. And so I really did not put a lot of importance into it. It just brought up the question. I mean, people get cut from movies all the time.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So I didn't have a lot of weight into it, but it was the very first time that I had heard Lena Headey's name being attached to the movie, which was only mildly curious. And then as I glanced through the article, I had also read that Jeff Goldblum and Peter Dinklage were going to be reprising their roles, and they had also been left from the film. I don't know if they'd ever filmed anything, if they had been written into the script and cut at script stage, or if they had actually filmed a couple of scenes and been cut there. But the original draft had them included, and that all came from comicbookresources.com. That's where I browsed that from.
Interesting. And speaking of stories from outside sources, in fact, you can chase down this piece of video was shot for Entertainment Tonight, and it's Taika Waititi walking Chris Hemsworth around the set for New Asgard, which in this movie has been turned into a theme park / tourist destination, which brings us to the image of the background that's supposedly upsetting some people online. And it's of an ice cream stand in New Asgard that is called Infinity Cones. And to make sure that everybody gets the joke, there's a giant hand sticking out of the side of the building holding a waffle cone, but the giant hand is inside of the Infinity Gauntlet with the stones. Sure. And evidently, again, that there's a number of folks online who have too much time on their hands and complained about, well, this is very insensitive. I'm thinking about all the people who died in the blip and, never came back. And it just is sort of like, okay, first of all, I don't think you understood what went on in Endgame and Infinity War. More to the point, it's a movie?
If Taika Waititi wanted to blow your mind, people, he would make it a same-sex waffle cone kiss. And oh my goodness, it was strawberry and vanilla, people. I've never seen such. Oh, I had to look away, Martha. Strawberry and vanilla. Well, waffle cones, pieces everywhere.
This same person goes on to complain to the effect, doing a Thanos-themed ice cream parlor is the equivalent of a Hitler or a Putin-themed ice cream parlor. And it's just sort of like, well, first of all, if you're saying that, you clearly don't know Taika Waititi's filmography. Right. What was it, Jojo Rabbit from 2019, which he directed and co-wrote. But that's the film where Taika himself plays Adolf Hitler as the imaginary friend of a little German boy during World War II, right?
Yeah, the movie is it's powerful. It's funny. It's got, but man, Scarlett Johansson's in the movie, and I'm just gonna say the word shoes. He does such a wonderful job at framing some shoes in this movie. And man, it breaks your heart, and we'll leave it there. It's a great movie. I recommend it. But yeah, he plays Hitler, and he's got no bones about doing something weird and wild.
No, and if anything, given the fact that Taika took home that year's Oscar for Best Adapted Screenplay, I don't think using the Hitler or Putin argument is going to work with this guy.
Couple funny stories for Taika. Okay. I can't remember where the interview was from but he was quoted as saying that he had when they were doing What We Do in the Shadows, the film.
Yep.
Peter Jackson just got done wrapping The Hobbit in New Zealand.
I heard this. Yes, please tell the story.
Yeah, and so they didn't have budget for set or anything, and I guess it was their set director or whomever was in charge of building set went and nicked a bunch of wood from the old Hobbit set as Peter was exiting, and that's what they ended up building their home for What We Do in the Shadows film. And he goes, I don't know if we'll get in trouble. I love telling this story at parties. And I think, I don't know if Peter's heard the story yet or not, but yeah, that's a wonderful little story from Taika there. Another thing that I think is really funny, more on point to Thor and what we have coming up in our future. Taika was recently interviewed and said that he added Thor's goat's tooth gnasher and tooth grinder to the movie to mess with James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. And I guess this is like director's version of hot potato. Hey, James, here's some goats. Deal with it. What are you going to do? Oh, I got to change my script real quick to deal with these stupid goats. Dear Taika, here's your Christmas card. Jack.
You gotta love, something like that where someone's got to knock the ball back into play.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that brings us to the end of another edition of Marvelous Disney. And again, sorry we've been off the air the past week or so. First, Nancy had something going on, and then health-wise, and you're dealing with something right now, Aaron, and I appreciate you making the time to record, but we'll be back to our usual schedule next week. In the meantime, Aaron, obviously, you can, in fact, what did you just post on social media that
By George Lucas.
There we go. There we go.
My wife ordered that like last year. It finally got here.
Okay, and does he in fact have blue jeans and plaid shirt on under that?
I can't take him out of the plastic, so we'll never ever know.
I guess so. Okay, well, can you tell folks where they can find you on social media?
Yeah, head on over to Twitter. My handle, like a truck driver, click, good buddy there, Rubber Ducky, is at Azaprod, AZAPROD. Oh, Jim, by the way, I can't believe I forgot to tell you this. Thanks to Twitter, I found out I have a half-brother.
Excuse me?
I found out I have a half brother through Twitter. I was very excited about this. We don't know if it's the top half or the bottom half, but anyway, be careful in the water. Shark attacks still happen, and you walked right into it. Swam right into it.
I did.
Where are you at on Twitter?
I am not a very bright man. Okay, so you can find me on Twitter and Instagram as Jim Hill Media, and over on Facebook as Jim Hill Media News. Also would like to point out we have a couple of other podcasts here. We've got Disney Dish that I do with Len Testa. Likewise, Fine Tuning that I do with Drew Taylor. That's Animation News. We should be getting a new Looking at Lucasfilm out the door shortly. I got to talk with Brian Gahn about that. Tell you what, if you could do Aaron and I a favor, if you could head over to Apple Podcasts and rate and recommend the show you're listening to right now. Likewise, if you really, really didn't like what you heard, if you want to head over to Bandcamp and subscribe, that would be helpful too. And we will be back next week where we will discuss episode 6 of, again, what we hope is the first season of Ms. Marvel. But for now, thanks for listening, and we will be back soon.